What does your crazy neighbor do to be labeled the crazy neighbor? Had severe anger issues and yelled at anything or anyone he didn't like on the street. A few years ago he had a road rage incident, and when he started banging on the other car's windows the occupants got out and beat him badly. During this he had a heart attack and now barely has enough mobility to walk to the mailbox and back. Also, he doesn't yell anymore. My sister's neighbor reported my sister to the police because her kids were playing in my sister's garden. Not for the usual reasons, too much noise etc. Nope, because a volcano in Italy had erupted and the radiation would hurt them. My sister lives in the UK. He jumped in front of my car while I was driving down the road to yell at me for going through his trash at night. Told him it was probably raccoons. He refuses to believe it to this day. How do we know you aren't a raccoon? A quick look at your name tells me you got it from the trash. How do you explain that? She has a penchant for going around sticking nails in people's tires at night. This has happened dozens of times to nearly everyone on the street, though she's slowed down since more people started installing video cams and motion sensor lights in their driveways. Years ago he had a guy in our neighborhood like this. He stopped hitting our house when my crazy-ass mother came flying out the house around 3 a.m. with her baseball bat. Pulled us over pretending to be a police officer, saying that we had somehow broken the law whilst pulling out of our driveway and that she was going to call it in. She isn't a cop lol. Edit, I considered using my dashcam video to actually call it in, but we had just moved in and I wasn't sure if she was the type of crazy to burn the house down or poison my dog. After chatting with the other neighbors, it turns out she's just the wannabe HOA president in a neighborhood with no HOA. So, mostly harmless. Just very annoying. Pretty sure that's a crime. My neighbor sits in his yard, hides behind his plants and meows at people who pass by. He is not dangerous at all, but he is not right in the head either. His caretakers are his parents and they seem to be very nice people. His dad once told me he just likes to be a cat and left it at that. I didn't ask any more questions. The old lady who lived below me left me multiple cryptic letters blaming me for the birds chirping too loudly in the mornings. Not pet birds. The sparrows and shit outside. This went on for months. Edit, I'm flattered by the upvotes and awards. Thank you. To answer the most commonly asked question. Yes, for a brief period I had a bird feeder. I took it down after a few months after multiple cryptic letters. Eventually management got involved and took her side even though bird feeders were explicitly allowed per the lease. There were several trees nearby, including one that literally hung onto both her and my balconies. I assure you that birds existed before I set up the feeder, as they continued to exist after. My sister and Bill took over the lease 4 years ago, and they still get the occasional note from Bird Lady. Apartment management has even inspected their unit to verify there's no bird feeder or any other bird luring devices. Edit 2, I found one of the notes. Again, your bird dodo is on my railings, bird seeds on my porch and chairs, and your birds are ruining my night rest, wee hours of the morning, birds in your feeder chirping. Bird feeder was gone at this point. He eats my flowers. In his defense, he told us that he has been doing it for years when he introduced himself after we bought the house. He also brought over frozen cookies in a plastic bag, as a housewarming gift, but wasn't sure what was in them. We share a side yard and as he was talking to us, I noticed his all-brick house was actually roofing shingles, layered to look like brick. It started to register that he may be a little out there. He's a great neighbor. Just an older, eccentric stoner who keeps to himself and eats my flowers. No shame. Comes over to my yard, and eats my lilies raw, or brings scissors and clips the heads to boil and make jam. It's crazy to me, but we have embraced it. I planted a couple raspberry, blackberry, and blueberry bushes 3 years ago, when we first moved in, on the side yard we share. As well as a few knockout rose bushes. I told him to help himself to berries/roses anytime, especially before the birds do. The bushes have all gone insane and the entire side of my house is now a yearly buffet for my neighbor. Having a decent relationship with a crazy guy I share a property line with, is worth some dead-headed flowers. We had one a while back that had a meth lab in the home. Crazy fights, yelling at all hours of the night, dude would wander around the hood tweaked out crazy, and once he threw a Molotov cocktail out of the second floor window at another dude who was smashing up his car, screaming, "I'll fucking kill you, motherfucker." Those were interesting times. Had a neighbor who wouldn't let anyone use his driveway because he didn't want it to get dirty. Anyone including himself. He parked on the street outside. If he thought you were having a party he would drag a bunch of plastic bags full of God knows what to the end of his driveway so no one could turn around it. One time I came home and he was outside hosing it down in the rain. To his credit, I've never seen a cleaner driveway. She dug up my fancy flowers and replanted them in her own yard, 15 feet away. I felt this. My crazy neighbor took my new blueberry and raspberry bushes and stuck them in her yard. She replaced them with sticks she found. Used to live in a little town of 300 people where we had an elderly neighbor named Gladys. She would routinely look near our garbage can outside and take the recyclable bottles and cans we would leave for her. After we cleaned out a fish tank, we put the gravel and fake plants in a bag and left it on top of the garbage can because it was already full. About a week later, Gladys hollered at me while I was outside to come over as she wanted to show me something. She had taken that bag we had left and planted the fake plants along the side of her house. She said she wasn't real confident that they would make it, but so far they seemed to be thriving. I could only nod and compliment her on her green thumb. Better than me, who just did the opposite. Moved my daughter out of college and stuffed her plastic succulents into a box. Weeks later she asked where the plants were so she could water them. But they actually survived. Tough little things. When I first moved in, my neighbor walked into the house, unannounced. When my wife gets home, sometimes she wants to stay in her car having a phone conversation. He will come out and walk down the side of his house, checking his sprinkler controls, and looks at my wife. He has two huge bushes he refuses to cut. It blocks our view of backing out of our driveway. The fire department came by to clear trees and bushes around the fire hydrants. The neighbor came out and yelled at the fireman, "This bush is older than you." Needless to say, I hope there are no house fires. We used to live next to a woman that would have a disco party for her cats in her backyard at 2 a.m. every few days. She would put up a disco ball and party lights with music playing. It was a little bit odd, but what made it crazy was her dancing like a Native American performing a ritual around the disco ball. It's honestly one of the strangest things I've ever witnessed. She stalks us. Like every time I get home she'll walk outside and tell me I was either 3 minutes late or getting home this time, or that I'm home 2 minutes earlier, and then ask me why. One time my friend and her sister came to pick me up. The neighbor was against her window with her hands and face pressed up on the glass trying to look at who was coming to pick me up. My friend and her sister were so terrified they called me telling me to hurry up because a crazy lady was staring at them through a window. I replied, "Oh, it's just the stalker neighbor." Yeah, that was a funny day. I had a neighbor who would sneak into my yard at night and roll up my sod. It would be laid perfectly the night before, but I'd get up in the morning and it would be rolled up just like it was when it came from the store. I finally got pissed and spent the night laying by my back door with a baseball bat and a flashlight, ready to bonk the crap out of whoever it was. Sure enough, they came around 2 in the morning, and I stood up, turned the light on, and was face to face with 4 raccoons rolling up my sod, looking for bugs. He was hopping my fence during the day when I was gone at work to use my backyard pool. When confronted, thanks to a snitch neighbor, he claimed he had an agreement with the previous tenant that he could use the pool whenever he wanted. Guess what? I'm not that tenant. I have a bunch of security cameras now. Took my parents to court because he lost in our HOA chairman election. Some people just have too much free time. Edit. He actually demanded we pay his legal fees after he lost in court. Wise. Called the police on people parked perfectly legal in front of their house, took pictures of my partner's dad just working in the yard, disappeared suddenly without a trace and then suddenly come back home in the dead of night 8 months later. Weirdos. Anyone else here suddenly realize the reason you don't have a crazy neighbor might be because you're the crazy neighbor? Edit. I have thoroughly enjoyed the stories from all of us crazy neighbors.